The moment Carter walked through the doors of the Elbow River Community Center, he wasn't expecting much. Just another sponsorship event, another handshake with the arena director, another photo for the foundation newsletter. He had done 100 of these. He noticed the boy first. Not because the child was loud or remarkable in any particular way, but because he was standing exactly the way Carter used to stand as a kid, weight on his left foot, chin tilted slightly upward, watching the skaters on the ice, with an expression caught between longing and patience. The boy was maybe 4 or 5, wearing a Calgary Flames toque that had slipped sideways over one ear. He hadn't fixed it. He was too busy watching. Carter slowed. There was something about the boy's profile, the straight line of the nose, the jaw. Then the woman crouched beside the child, and Carter stopped walking entirely. Clara hadn't changed the way he'd expected. Her hair was shorter, and she wore a coat he didn't recognize. But the way she looked at the little boy, the way she adjusted the toque over his ear without him even noticing, the way her hands stayed on his shoulder for just a second longer than necessary, that was exactly as he remembered. The boy turned and said something. Clara laughed, and Carter felt the sound land somewhere in his chest before he understood why. He took a step forward without deciding to. Clara looked up, and the laughter disappeared. Neither of them spoke. The ice rink hummed. Somewhere behind Carter, a child was crying about a lost glove. "Carter," she said finally. Her voice was level, careful. He looked at the boy again. The boy looked back at him with wide, curious eyes, dark brown, which was Clara's, but the brow, the jaw, the slight tilt of his head when he studied a stranger. "Whose son is he?" Carter asked, though some part of him already knew. Clara straightened and reached for the boy's hand. "We should go. Finn's lesson starts soon." "Clara," his voice came out quieter than he intended. "How old is he?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to. They had met 5 years earlier, at a charity gala in downtown Calgary. Clara had been there with a colleague from the physiotherapy clinic. Someone had donated 2 tickets, and neither of them particularly wanted to go, but it was free dinner, and they were both worn out from a full week of patients. Carter had come because his family's law firm sponsored the event every year. He arrived late, still on a call, jacket undone, and nearly walked straight into her tray of champagne flutes. "I'm so sorry," he said, catching one glass before it tipped. Clara looked at him. "You should probably finish your call before you come inside." He laughed, surprised. He was not often spoken to that way at these events. He stepped outside, ended the call, came back in, and found her again. She was from Red Deer originally. She had put herself through school, moved to Calgary 5 years before they met, and built her own client base without any family connections or inherited advantage. She told him this not as a boast but as a simple fact, the way someone states their address. He found her the most interesting person in the room. They dated for 7 months. During that time, Carter was careful and attentive in ways that caught her off guard. He remembered the name of her most challenging patient, the anniversary of her clinic's opening, the kind of tea she ordered when she was tired. He made her feel known. The problem started quietly, the way they always do. "My mother would like to meet you," he said one evening, in a way that suggested the meeting had already been arranged. Eleanor Ashby was not an unkind woman in any obvious sense. She offered Clara tea in a Waterford cup. She asked about her work with what sounded like genuine interest. She said all the right things in a voice that never rose above a pleasant, even tone. But between the sentences, there was a current Clara felt clearly, even if she couldn't quote it back exactly afterward. Eleanor asked how long she planned to stay in Calgary. She asked whether Clara's parents were still in Red Deer. She mentioned lightly that Carter had always been close to his family and would need a partner who understood what that meant. "What does it mean?" Clara asked. Eleanor smiled. "It means some decisions belong to the family." On the drive home, Carter said his mother liked her. Clara looked out the window and said nothing. 2 months later, Clara was offered a corporate contract in Edmonton, a sports physiotherapy program, 3 days a week, a genuine step forward for her career. Carter said it was too much time apart. Clara said it was her career. They argued the way people argue when they are actually fighting about something else. He said she kept herself at arm's length. She said she had never asked him to manage her schedule. He said she never truly let him in. She said she was right in front of him, always had been. He said he needed someone who could be there. She understood what he meant. He needed someone his mother could accept. She left his apartment that night. She went back 11 days later, because he showed up at her clinic on a Thursday with takeout from her favorite Thai place in Kensington, standing in the doorway with 2 bags and no explanation. She let him in because she was hungry and because she was still, despite everything, very much in love with him. They lasted another month. The final argument began after Eleanor called Clara's clinic director. Not to cause trouble, she later explained to Carter, but simply to raise a concern about scheduling and long-term commitment. The director had mentioned it sideways, half confused, unsure what to make of it. Clara drove to Carter's house and told him what had happened. He went pale. He said he hadn't known. She believed him. "Call her," Clara said. He called. Eleanor said she had only been trying to help, that she worried Clara was taking on too much, that she'd meant no harm whatsoever. Carter came back into the room and looked at Clara with an expression she hadn't seen before. "She means well," he said. Clara picked up her keys. "I know she does," she said. "That's the problem." She walked out. This time she didn't count the days. 3 weeks later, she was sitting in the parking lot of a Shoppers Drug Mart off Crowchild Trail at 11 o'clock at night, looking at 2 parallel blue lines on a stick she'd bought from the self-checkout. Her first thought was her schedule for the next 6 months. 3 complex patients, the Edmonton contract still half negotiated, a workshop she was presenting in March. Her second thought was Carter, the way he had said she means well, the expression on his face, not defending his mother exactly, but not choosing Clara either. Her third thought stayed with the 2 blue lines for a long time. When she finally drove home, her mother Frances was asleep on the couch with the television still on. She'd been visiting for the weekend. Clara sat beside her and didn't wake her, just watched an old cooking program with the volume low until she was ready to think. She had always figured things out alone when she had to. She had done it before. 2 days after her doctor confirmed it, 8 weeks healthy, Eleanor Ashby called. Clara almost didn't answer. She answered. "I'll keep this brief," Eleanor said. "If you're pregnant, and I suspect you might be, there are arrangements that can be made." Clara was very still. "Our family has known this city for 40 years, Eleanor continued. "Carter has a certain kind of future here. I'd like you to understand what that means before you make any decisions. A child caught between 2 households, with a mother working irregular hours, and a father whose family has the legal resources to argue otherwise, would be in a very difficult position." "Say what you mean," Clara said. Eleanor's voice didn't waver. "I mean that if you pursue this, I can't promise you won't regret it." The call ended. Clara sat at her kitchen table. She laid one hand flat against the surface, the way she did when she needed to feel something solid. She thought about calling Carter. She thought about what he would say. She thought about how he had looked at her the night she walked out. Sorry, genuinely pained, but not willing to choose. She thought about a child growing up inside that particular hesitation, waiting for a father who was always negotiating with his family about how much space to give. She did not call Carter. She called Frances. Frances drove down that same weekend and never really left. Finn arrived on a Tuesday in March, during a Chinook that had turned Calgary unseasonably warm. Frances was in the delivery room, holding Clara's hand and offering instructions that nobody had requested. Clara laughed once involuntarily, somewhere between the worst of it. When the nurse placed him in her arms, squinting, furious, enormous-lunged, Clara looked at his face and recognized something entirely new. "Hi," she said very quietly. Finn stopped crying for exactly 3 seconds, as though he was listening. She named him on her own. He took her last name. There was no discussion, because there was no one to discuss it with. For 5 years they managed. Clara went back to work when Finn was 4 months old, reduced hours at first. Frances stayed through the first year and then moved back to Red Deer, but came down every second weekend without fail, without complaint, with casseroles Clara never had to ask for. Finn turned out to be a person with very specific interests and very specific opinions. He liked skating but not hockey. "I just want to go fast," he explained, with a gravity that left no room for argument. He disliked raisins in any form. He asked questions in the middle of cartoons that derailed the entire story. He treated his grandmother's opinions as second only to his mother's. He asked about his father only once, while stacking blocks on the kitchen floor at age 4. "Does everyone have a dad?" he said, not looking up. "Most people have 2 parents," Clara said. "Some have one." "Do I have a dad?" "Yes." "Where?" "He lives in Calgary. We're not together." Finn put a blue block on top of a red one. Does he know about me? Clara paused for 1 second too long. Finn looked up. He was 4. He understood the pause. He didn't ask again. At the community center, Carter followed her outside. He's mine, he said. It was not a question. He's mine, Clara said. He has been for 5 years. Carter ran a hand over the back of his neck. Why didn't you tell me? Your mother called me when I was 8 weeks pregnant. She made it very clear that a custody situation involving your family's legal resources would not go well for a physiotherapist from Red Deer. Clara held his gaze. So I made a decision. Carter stared at her. She called you. She did. He said nothing. Clara watched him absorb it and chose not to soften any edges. I should have told you, she said. That part was wrong, and I've known it. But I was 28 years old, pregnant, and your mother had just outlined what your family could do if they chose to. And you were the one who told me she meant well. I was trying to. I know what you were trying to do. Her voice stayed even. That's why I didn't call. In the months that followed, Carter came to Finn slowly and carefully, which was to his credit. He did not bring gifts the first 3 visits. He did not correct Finn or rush him. He learned that Finn disliked being watched too closely while he skated, so he stopped hovering at the boards and sat in the stands instead. Somewhere Finn could look up and choose whether to wave. Finn chose to wave. The first time Finn said Carter instead of that man was after a November skating lesson, when Carter had been waiting outside with a hot chocolate. One for Finn, one for Clara, which he had not asked her about, but which turned out to be exactly what she would have ordered. He handed it over without making anything of it. That was the right instinct. Clara allowed herself to notice. The night it fell apart was a Tuesday again. Clara had agreed to Finn spending the afternoon with Carter, their first time alone. She had sent the rules clearly. Finn's inhaler was in the front pocket of his bag. No unplanned stops, home by 6. At 5:15, she checked Finn's location on his smartwatch. He was at the Ashby family home in Elbow Park. She called Carter. He answered on the second ring. Where's Finn? A pause. He's here. My parents wanted to meet him. It was only going to be. You promised. Clara, they're his grandparents. You promised me. Background noise, a child's voice, Finn's voice. Is that Mom? Finn said, somewhere behind Carter. She heard Eleanor, smooth and unhurried. Come look at this, sweetheart. Finn, Clara said. Finn, I'm on the phone. Carter said, he's fine, I'll have him home by. Mom? Finn's voice was closer, higher now. Mom, I want to go home. The call disconnected. Clara was already in her coat. She found out later that it was Nicole who opened the side gate. Carter's wife, whom Clara had never met, who had known about Finn for 3 weeks by then, who had by all accounts said almost nothing when Carter told her and had been quietly watching ever since. Nicole came outside while Eleanor and Carter's father were still arguing in the front room about what a visit like this established. She opened the gate without fanfare. Then she walked back inside. Finn came down the driveway, still in his jacket from the afternoon, the flames took sideways again, face red from crying. He ran into Clara's legs and grabbed on with both arms. She caught him. She held him. She could hear Eleanor's voice distantly from inside the house. She did not go in. In the mediation room, Finn sat beside Clara with one sock-footed leg tucked beneath him on the chair. He had been asked what he wanted by a child specialist who spoke in the careful voice adults use when they are trying very hard not to be frightening. I want to keep skating lessons, Finn said. Anything else? He thought about it. I want to live at home. You're home with your mom? Yeah. He glanced across the table at Carter. Carter can visit, though. He's learning to skate. Carter made a sound that was not quite a laugh. Eleanor, who had insisted on being present, said from her seat that a child of 5 could not possibly be expected to make this kind of decision on his own, that the family had resources, that stability required. Mrs. Ashby, the mediator said, gently but with finality, the parents will make this decision. Eleanor pressed her lips together. Carter looked at his mother for a long moment. Then he looked at Finn. He stays with his mom, Carter said. That's not a question. 2 weeks later, Clara received a text from an unfamiliar number. I know we've never spoken. I wanted to say I'm sorry for what Eleanor said to you 5 years ago. I've known her for 4 years. I believe every word of what you told Carter. I hope Finn is okay. Clara held her phone for a while. Then she typed back, he's okay. Thank you for the gate. 3 dots appeared then. Anyone would have. Clara looked at that for a moment, then set her phone face down on the counter. She didn't think that was true, necessarily, but she was glad Nicole had. On the first Saturday in January, Carter came to pick up Finn for their weekly afternoon. He arrived 4 minutes early, which had become his habit. Finn was still putting on his second boot. Traffic was light, Carter said from the doorway. Clara handed him Finn's bag. For a moment neither of them spoke, and it was not an uncomfortable silence. Just the ordinary pause of two people who had run out of the specific things that still needed to be said. He wants to try hockey, Clara said. I told him he has to finish the skating term first. Carter nodded. That's fair. Finn appeared in the hallway, one boot fully laced and one still dangling. I'm ready, he announced, with the significant confidence of someone with an undone boot. Carter crouched and laced it. Finn watched him with the expression of a person who was allowing this. Carter, Finn said, while the boot was being laced. Yeah? Will you come to my skating show? It's in February. He glanced briefly at Clara. Mom's coming. Carter kept his hands moving. He didn't look up right away. I'll be there, he said. Finn nodded, satisfied, as though this had always been the most natural outcome in the world. He walked out the door first, already thinking about something else. Carter stood and looked back at Clara. There was nothing dramatic in it. No apology, no appeal. Just the plain acknowledgement that comes when two people have finally stopped negotiating over who was right. I'll have him home by 6, he said. I know, said Clara. And she watched them go.